Have you ever sat through an all-hands where the slides sparkle and the energy's high, yet you walk out unclear on what's expected of you, how leadership views the team, or the longer-term aim and strategy? That gap between delivery and perception often comes down to one thing: preparation. How do you fix that? Well, you use a leader's checklist. Think of it like a pilot's pre-flight checks. Only here it's a set of prompts that keeps attention on vision, strategy, expectations, and execution. They can come to your aid in routine meetings as well as when pressure rises, so small lapses don't stack into big failures. Today, you'll build a personal checklist, tailor it through 6 lenses, and test it with evidence. You'll unpack 16 core leadership principles in plain language and which ones you should never overlook. You'll also see the checklist at work, from rescues and restructurings to a battlefield handover, and finish by thinking like a CEO even before you have the title. When a government minister is jolted awake by a mine collapse, or a chief finance officer is asked to command a shaky spin-off, the outcome hinges on preparation. The practical tool behind this is a leader's checklist, a compact, tested set of principles that helps you decide, act, and communicate under pressure. A leader's checklist grows from direct observation, executive interviews, and realistic simulations. It's streamlined for quick use and still substantial enough to guide sound judgment when information is incomplete and time is tight. Because leadership settings vary, the checklist needs to be adapted through 6 lenses. First, company context sets priorities. A global industry might emphasize tough people calls and leader training, while an innovation-driven firm prizes small, creative teams. Then your role matters. A chief executive cultivates investor relationships and an earnings story, while a director partners with management, delegates authority, and helps set strategy. Next, national culture influences how authority and communication are expressed. Leaders in India and China, for example, will add different traits shaped by local expectations while still drawing on the same core leadership principles. The fourth lens we need to adapt our checklist through is timing. Structural change initiatives call for a compelling case and early wins, while crisis periods call for swift decisions, focus, and steady confidence. The fifth lens is organizational stage. Is your organization a startup going through growth or expansion, or mature? And finally, the sixth lens, place-specific missions. Patrols, wildland fire units, enterprise sales, these all benefit from tailored, mission-ready checklists. Use these lenses to shape your checklist to your setting so you and your team know what to do, who will do it, and when. An effective checklist can't live on paper alone. It needs to work in the real world. That means testing it through evidence. Consider this revealing exercise run by a large financial services firm. Leaders there started with a list of 200 desirable traits, narrowed it to 39, and then ran a comparison on how the leader's peers and team rated them on those traits versus how the leaders actually performed 1 year later. Only 9 traits consistently linked to results. Favorites like loyalty to the company, building a team-based sales culture, and streamlining processes had no measurable impact. So the firm rebuilt its checklist around the 9 that did. Checklists must be revised when the data shows they're out of date. Items that sound right or feel important don't always deliver results. If you want your checklist to work, keep updating it based on real results. But even a strong checklist won't help if you don't use it. In aviation, some planes now hold pilots back from full control until every pre-flight item has been confirmed. But there's no such enforcement in business. No system forces leaders to check themselves before big decisions. That's why many fail not through ignorance, but by skipping what they already know matters. To build the habit of applying your checklist, start with 4 things. First, watch how others lead, whether through biographies, live examples, or leadership training. Second, get feedback from mentors who can spot what you're missing. Third, take on challenges that stretch you and expose blind spots. And fourth, reflect on your own leadership moments, especially the ones that didn't go well. 2 real-world cases show how this plays out. At biopharmaceutical firm Merck, a research director funded a treatment for river blindness knowing it wouldn't be profitable short-term. but it boosted the company's reputation, recruiting, and standing with regulators. And in 2014, the CEO of American drugstore heavyweight CVS removed tobacco products from its stores, over 7,600 of them. The move hurt CVS's annual revenue to the tune of $2 billion, but in those areas affected, total cigarette consumption dropped drastically. This strengthened CVS's image as a health brand. A checklist only proves its worth when the pressure is on. In stable conditions, it's easy to coast. But when markets shift or stakes rise, the checklist becomes essential. That's why it has to stay alive, regularly tested, revised, and reapplied. It's not a replacement for thinking. It's the prompt that makes sure nothing gets missed when it matters most. It's all very well knowing what makes a good checklist, but what should actually be on it? Where do you begin? Thankfully, there are 16 oven-ready principles you can reach for in any setting. Ordinary workdays, off-sites, online sessions, and crisis calls. Not every prompt fits every moment, yet the discipline of asking keeps you moving from intention to action. Taken together, these principles have proven their worth when uncertainty and change raise the stakes. Let's start with the first principle. Articulate a vision. Help your team see the big picture beyond their own corners. Make sure everyone knows where they're heading and why the destination is appealing. Next, think and act strategically. Commit to a realistic plan that delivers near-term results while mapping the future. Consider every player and probable roadblock and check that people can explain your competitive path and value drivers in plain language and that they actually back them. Third, honor the room. Make respect unmistakable. Make it easy for upward guidance to reach you. Build frontline engagement so people experience a shared us. As a fourth move, take charge and lead change. Step in when the moment calls, even without full formal authority. Accept responsibility. Delegate technical calls while remaining accountable. Next, act decisively. Aim for decisions that are both sound and timely. State your intent so others can decide within it. Move when you're roughly 70% confident. Sixth, communicate persuasively. Keep messages on vision, strategy, and execution crystal clear and memorable. Use the full range of channels, from direct conversations to broad distribution, and have a tight elevator pitch ready. The seventh principle is to motivate the workforce. Ask yourself, do I know everyone's hot button? Am I weaving my own personal pride and shared purpose into most of my messages? If not, work on that. Save your strongest appeals for truly urgent moments. And the final principle in our first set is to embrace the front lines. Make your intent explicit and empower action. Meet regularly with those in direct contact with customers. Keep ideas and concerns flowing upward without friction. These 8 principles establish direction, trigger movement, and keep energy high at the point of work. In the next section, we'll cover the remaining 8. The 9th principle on our list of 16 is to build leadership in others. Make it an expectation that every manager develops leaders. Shape a culture that enables effective leadership and ensure development opportunities reach widely. For the 10th principle, manage relations. Keep hierarchy lean so information, especially bad news, moves upward. Require self-awareness and empathy in your managers. Set standards that censure autocratic, egocentric, or irritable behavior. 11th, identify personal implications. Help people see how the company vision and strategy touch their roles. Be candid about sacrifices that may be needed. Clarify likely effects on livelihood and daily work. Your example carries weight, which leads to the 12th principle, convey your character. Commit to performance with integrity. Let people know you as a person, your aims and agendas. Make direct contact with everyone who works with you during the year, if not in person, then through a call. 13th, dampen over-optimism and excessive pessimism. Prepare for unlikely, high-impact events. Celebrate successes, but check any drift toward overconfidence. Balance quarterly delivery with durable performance. At number 14, we have build a diverse top team. This principle is about multiplying impact. Draw high performers into your inner circle. Blend varied expertise under a shared purpose. Keep that team engaged, energized, and included. Place common interests first is number 15. Contribute to the organization's purpose and use it to guide decisions. Put shared resolve ahead of private gain. Ensure vision and strategy embody the mission. Finally, the 16th principle is think like a chief executive. Reason at enterprise scale even if you don't hold the title. Ask what top leadership would expect from you right now, and deliver it. Pull functions and operations under one coherent umbrella. Keep this full set close, in team leadership, across teams, and in governance, so you avoid unforced errors and step into the leadership the moment requires. In the remaining sections, we'll look at some of the principles that have the highest payoff in practice. According to many managers, 3 of the 16 principles we've just seen are often underutilized, either in the manager's own behavior or in what they observe from others, especially more senior leaders. The result is a personal shortfall and weakened leadership when the stakes are high. Honor the room is one of the most commonly neglected. This principle means showing confidence in those around you. Some leaders fail to demonstrate respect, suppress feedback, and erode trust. One example was former Pfizer CEO Jeff Kindler, whose confrontational style and micromanagement left him isolated and eventually pushed out by the board. Another is communicate persuasively, number 6 in our list. Even experienced leaders can struggle to connect with their audience when it matters most. Tony Hayward, then CEO of BP, famously came up short after the Deepwater Horizon disaster, drawing outrage for failing to convey persuasive concern for the environmental impact of the ruptured BP wellhead. Our third underutilized principle is place common interest first. While this principle calls for putting shared purpose ahead of personal gain, it's often absent in high-pressure environments like finance. But its power is clear in other settings. When Staff Sergeant Salvatore Giunta risked his life under enemy fire in Afghanistan to rescue a fellow soldier, President Obama described it as selflessness above and beyond the call of duty. When circumstances become especially challenging, like during economic shocks, public health crises, or social instability, 3 other principles stand out as vital. These are: think and act strategically, take charge and lead change, and act decisively. The principles could be seen in action during COVID-19, when leaders were compelled to double down on strategic thinking, taking charge, and decisive decisions. That final principle, act decisively, was vividly demonstrated by New York Fire Department Chief Joseph Pfeiffer on 9/11. Just minutes after seeing a plane hit the North Tower, Pfeiffer called for mass deployment. Inside the building, he made a cascade of split-second decisions as the situation deteriorated. Then, when the South Tower collapsed, he gave the evacuation order that saved lives. His story shows what decisive action looks like when there's no time to hesitate, and why these checklist principles matter most in the hardest moments. In April 1865, General Ulysses S. Grant ordered a formal surrender ceremony to mark the end of the American Civil War. He chose Union officer Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain to oversee the event. As the first Confederate brigades approached, Chamberlain, acting on his own initiative, ordered a bugle call which signaled his men to carry arms, a formal salute of respect. The gesture came just days after Chamberlain had been wounded by Confederate fire. It was a moment of restraint and grace, and many interpreted it as a gesture of reconciliation. A Confederate general, John B. Gordon, noticed the salute and instructed his own troops to return the honor. This silent exchange became known as a salute returning a salute. Chamberlain's act exemplifies the universally applicable 16th principle in our list: think like a CEO. This principle applies in every situation, and without it, no leader's checklist is complete. In every decision and setting, act in a way that reflects what a company president or national leader would expect of you. Whatever your role or title, this mindset brings a broader, more responsible lens to your leadership. Denise Ramos demonstrated this approach before she ever became a CEO. After years in finance, she was appointed to lead a newly formed industrial spin-off, ITT Inc. The company came with baggage, legal liabilities, fragmented operations, and no shared identity. But Ramos had long thought beyond the numbers. Even as CFO at other companies, she had pushed into strategy and cross-functional leadership. When she stepped up at ITT, she filled gaps in her experience by building a diverse team and listening hard. Over 5 years, she led ITT Inc. through transformation. Revenue rose from $1.9 billion the year before she became CEO to $2.7 billion in her final year. Analysts credited her with defying expectations. This principle, thinking like a CEO before you have the title, builds readiness, perspective, and impact. It encourages long-term thinking, broader ownership, and alignment with enterprise goals. And it turns your everyday decisions into acts of leadership. That's why it must be on your leader's checklist.